In the Obama administration's last days, some White House officials scrambled to spread information about Russian efforts to undermine the presidential election, and about possible contacts between associates of President-elect Donald J. Trump and Russians, across the government. Former American officials say they had two aims: to ensure that such meddling isn't duplicated in future American or European elections, and to leave a clear trail of intelligence for government investigators. American allies, including the British and the Dutch, had provided information describing meetings in European cities between Russian officials, and others close to Russia's president, Vladimir V. Putin, and associates of President-elect Trump, according to three former American officials who requested anonymity in discussing classified intelligence. Separately, American intelligence agencies had intercepted communications of Russian officials, some of them within the Kremlin, discussing contacts with Trump associates. The disclosures about the contacts came as new questions were raised about Attorney General Jeff Sessions' ties to the Russians. According to a former senior American official, he met with the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, twice in the past year. The details of the meetings were not clear, but the contact appeared to contradict testimony Mr. Sessions provided Congress during his confirmation hearing in January when he said he did not have communications with the Russians. Mr. Sessions said in a statement late Wednesday that he never met with any Russian officials to discuss issues of the campaign. Continue reading the main story. Related coverage. Contradicting Trump on Russia, Russian officials February 20, 2017. Trump, the Russian ship and suspicious minds February 16, 2017. Recent comments. John 34 minutes ago. I wonder if the GOP will now agree that Sessions should probably recuse himself? Since it looks like he might end up having. KJ 34 minutes ago. Obama comes across as a low-key guy, but he's nobody's fool. He knew Donald's motives from square one. It's criminal that we have to rely on. RK 34 minutes ago. If verified, then in a word, treason. See all comments. I have no idea what this allegation is about, he said. It is false. Mr. Trump has denied that his campaign had any contact with Russian officials, and at one point he openly suggested that American spy agencies had cooked up intelligence suggesting that the Russian government had tried to meddle in the presidential election. Mr. Trump has accused the Obama administration of hyping the Russia storyline as a way to discredit his new administration. At the Obama White House, Mr. Trump's statements stoked fears among some that intelligence could be covered up or destroyed, or its sources exposed, once power changed hands. What followed was a push to preserve the intelligence that underscored the deep anxiety with which the White House and American intelligence agencies had come to view the threat from Moscow. It also reflected the suspicion among many in the Obama White House that the Trump campaign might have colluded with Russia on election email hacks, a suspicion that American officials say has not been confirmed. Former senior Obama administration officials said that none of the efforts were directed by Mr. Obama. Sean Spicer, the Trump White House spokesman, said, "The only new piece of information that has come to light is the political appointees in the Obama administration have sought to create a false narrative to make an excuse for their own defeat in the election." He added, "There continues to be no there." As Inauguration Day approached, Obama White House officials grew convinced that the intelligence was damning and that they needed to ensure that as many people as possible inside government could see it, even if people without security clearances could not. Some officials began asking specific questions at intelligence briefings, knowing the answers would be archived and could be easily unearthed by investigators, including the Senate Intelligence Committee, which in early January announced an inquiry into Russian efforts to influence the election. At intelligence agencies, there was a push to process as much raw intelligence as possible into analyses, and to keep the reports at a relatively low classification level to ensure as wide a readership as possible across the government, and, in some cases, among European allies. This allowed the upload of as much intelligence as possible to Intellipedia, a secret wiki used by American analysts to share information. There was also an effort to pass reports and other sensitive materials to Congress. In one instance, the State Department sent a cache of documents marked secret to Senator Benjamin Cardin of Maryland days before the January 20 inauguration. The documents, detailing Russian efforts to intervene in elections worldwide, were sent in response to a request from Mr. Cardin, the top Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee, and were shared with Republicans on the panel. This situation was serious, as is evident by President Obama's call for a review, and as is evident by the United States' response, said Eric Schultz, a spokesman for Mr. Obama. When the intelligence community does that type of comprehensive review, it is standard practice that a significant amount of information would be compiled and documented. The opposite happened with the most sensitive intelligence, including the names of sources and the identities of foreigners who were regularly monitored. Officials tightened the already small number of people who could access that information. They knew the information could not be kept from the new president or his top advisors, but wanted to narrow the number of people who might see the information, officials said. More than a half-dozen current and former officials described various aspects of the effort to preserve and distribute the intelligence, and some said they were speaking to draw attention to the material and ensure proper investigation by Congress. All spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were discussing classified information, nearly all of which remains secret, making an independent public assessment of the competing Obama and Trump administration claims impossible. The FBI is conducting a wide-ranging counterintelligence investigation into Russia's meddling in the election, and is examining alleged links between Mr. Trump's associates and the Russian government. Separately, the House and Senate Intelligence Committees are conducting their own investigations, though they must rely on information collected by the FBI and intelligence agencies. On Wednesday, a Justice Department official confirmed that Mr. Sessions had 2 conversations with Ambassador Kislyak last year, when he was still a senator, despite testifying at his January 10 confirmation hearing that he had no contact with the Russians. At that hearing, Mr. Sessions was asked what he would do if it turned out to be true that anyone affiliated with the Trump team had communicated with the Russian government in the course of the campaign. He said he was not aware of any of those activities. "I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it," Mr. Sessions said at the time. However, Justice officials acknowledged that Mr. Sessions had spoken with Mr. Kislyak twice, once, among a group of ambassadors who approached him at a Heritage Foundation event during the Republican National Convention in Cleveland in July and, separately, in an office meeting on September 8. The contacts were first reported by the Washington Post. Sarah Isgur Flores, Mr. Sessions' spokeswoman, said there was absolutely nothing misleading about his answer because he did not communicate with the ambassador in his capacity as a Trump campaign surrogate. She said Mr. Sessions had at least 25 conversations in 2016 with ambassadors from a range of nations, including Britain, Japan, China, Germany and Russia, while on the Senate Armed Services Committee. The revelation prompted congressional Democrats to issue a torrent of statements reiterating their demands that Mr. Sessions recuse himself from overseeing any investigation into Russia's contacts with the Trump campaign. So far, Mr. Sessions has demurred. Representative Adam B. Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, said in a statement on Wednesday that if the reports about Mr. Sessions were accurate, it is essential that he recuse himself from any role in the investigation of Trump campaign ties to the Russians. Mr. Schiff added, "This is not even a close call, it is a must." Representative Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader of the House, called on Mr. Sessions to resign, saying on Twitter that he is not fit to serve as the top law enforcement officer of our country. A White House official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, backed up Mr. Sessions late Wednesday, calling the accusations the latest attack against the Trump administration by partisan Democrats. At a CNN town hall on Wednesday, Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, said he did not know if there was anything between the Trump campaign and the Russians. But he added that if there was, it is clear to me that Jeff Sessions, who is my dear friend, cannot make this decision about Trump. At his confirmation hearing on Wednesday, former Senator Dan Coats, Mr. Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, told the Senate Intelligence Committee that I think it's our responsibility to provide you access to all that you need. Some Obama White House officials had little faith that the Trump administration would make good on such pledges, and the efforts to preserve the intelligence continued until the administration's final hours. This was partly because intelligence was still being collected and analyzed, but it also reflected the sentiment among many administration officials that they had not recognized the scale of the Russian campaign until it was too late. The warning signs had been building throughout the summer, but were far from clear. As WikiLeaks was pushing out emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee through online publication, American intelligence began picking up conversations in which Russian officials were discussing contacts with Trump associates, and European allies were starting to pass along information about people close to Mr. Trump meeting with Russians in the Netherlands, Britain and other countries. But what was going on in the meetings was unclear to the officials, and the intercepted communications did little to clarify matters. The Russians, it appeared, were arguing about how far to go in interfering in the presidential election. What intensified the alarm at the Obama White House was a campaign of cyber attacks on state electoral systems in September, which led the administration to deliver a public accusation against the Russians in October. But it wasn't until after the election, and after more intelligence had come in, that the administration began to grasp the scope of the suspected tampering and concluded that one goal of the campaign was to help tip the election in Mr. Trump's favor. In early December, Mr. Obama ordered the intelligence community to conduct a full assessment of the Russian campaign.